following is a CUNY TV special presentation.
Governor, welcome back from Cuba, and welcome back to ABNY. We thought the first trade deal that you would announce upon your return was the swap for your SUV for a mint-condition 1959 Chevy Bel Air, but I see that you came in your SUV, but hopefully you're still working on that. Since the 3 months that you were last with us, you have once again accomplished a number of record initiatives. First and foremost, congratulations on the passage of the 5th consecutive on-time budget. We were debating what to call that. We think maybe a five-fecta, but it was incredible, and your friends in the State Assembly and Senate also deserve a tremendous amount of credit. And New Yorkers throughout the entire state are, I think, feeling very good about the responsibility that is coming from Albany. It illustrates how disciplined the budget process is today and how far we've come after decades of dysfunctionality and delay. This year's $150 billion spending plan contains initiatives on critical economic development statewide, major infrastructure investments, income tax credits, education reforms, and juvenile justice reforms, among many others. Governor, we applaud you and the efforts of the Senate and the Assembly to ensure that so many important initiatives have been addressed this year for our state. You did this while continuing to rein in government spending. Because of this renewed fiscal discipline, we've also seen taxes go down, state shed its anti-business reputation. Just last fall, I stood with you in Lower Manhattan as you received an award from the Tax Foundation for your success in cutting taxes and moving New York from the middle of the pack to number 4 in the nation for our corporate tax system. Governor, as I mentioned, you can give him a round of applause for that also. Governor, as I mentioned, the governor is just back from a historic trade mission from Cuba, where he opened the doors for trade and business relations between New York and Cuba. And already these efforts are seeing tangible results, with 2 New York companies now in discussions with business opportunities in Cuba. Governor, you continue to position New York State as a leader in business and innovation and ensuring our great state gains the competitive edge that we need to be competitive in this global economy. While the state budget just passed in Albany, there's still much work to be done, and we are delighted to welcome back Governor Cuomo to ABNY to tell us more about what is in the budget and what the future entails. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Governor Andrew Cuomo.
I like the car. I would have liked to violated some rule.
Mission, probably a mission.
Yeah. Good morning. Good morning. It is my pleasure to be back. Many friends here. First, to Bill Rudin. Bill Rudin turned 60 years old this week. Happy birthday to Bill Rudin. Boy, it goes fast. Bill and I were sort of parallel existences, and we were always sons of, because we were sons of very big men. Lou Rudin, Mario Cuomo, sons of. So when you're a son of, you have this sort of sense of you're a juvenile, you're young, you're just a son. And then one day you wake up and you're an old man, just like your father was. And that's where we are now. But also, let's give Ophelia Rudin a hand, who's done phenomenal work for so long. From my staff, we also have Rick Cotton, who is special counsel. I'd like to introduce him. He's doing great work for us, former NBC general counsel, and he's just joined us. So Rick Cotton is here. Alfonso David, counsel to the governor, who's doing great work. Jim Malatras, who's Director of State Operations, and Melissa DeRosa, who handles all the communications and makes things sound right even when they're wrong. Melissa DeRosa. So let me give them a round of applause. My colleagues in Albany, the Assemblymen and Senators, and our new Speaker, Carl Hastie. Where are you, new Speaker? There's the new Speaker. The new Speaker and I went to Cuba together with a delegation. We had a lot of fun. We've known each other for many years. We're good friends. And we had to negotiate this budget together. Now, he was in a very tough spot because he literally became Speaker overnight by circumstance, and then he had to be at the table to negotiate a budget. And if you've never done the budget dance before, it's a very difficult dance to learn the steps because it's just an impossible situation. Especially when you have the situation where we have in New York. You have a Democratic Assembly, you have a Senate Republicans. They just want two different things fundamentally. Whatever one party wants, the other party doesn't want, and whatever one wants, the other one doesn't want. It's the couple talking about Christmas vacation, and the husband says, I think maybe we'll go to Italy for Christmas vacation, just two of us, romantic, Italian vacation. And the wife says, I was thinking we're going to take the kids to Disney World for Christmas. And, you know, how do you reconcile these two very different positions? And how do you get to compromise? And how do you get it done? And how do you avoid disagreement and gridlock? So you wind up going to Disney World for Christmas and having pizza, and everybody's unhappy. So Carl Hastie walks into this situation, but he had a device and a tactic that in retrospect I think was all planned, which was very, very effective. But I thought it was just spontaneous at the time. And I've negotiated budgets. I've negotiated in the federal government. I've negotiated with countries around the world when I was in the Clinton administration. And the new Speaker's tactic was this. We would go through whatever it is and we'd come up with a proposal. And he would sit there with an unhappy face. And when he has an unhappy face, it's not a mean or aggressive unhappy face. It's a really unhappy face that gives you a sense of guilt for causing his unhappiness. And guilt really works with me. So I would say, Carl, what's wrong? I thought we were friends. Oh, I thought we were friends. But we are friends. You're not treating me like a friend. Oh, okay, 50 million more. I thought we were better friends than that. Speaker Carl Hastie did an amazing job getting a great budget. Let's give him a round of applause. Stand up, Carl. Stand up and let's give him a round. And this budget, when you look at it, really is one of the best budgets I think that we've done in 5 years, and it covers a lot of territory. Let me run through the budget, what we did in the budget, and what we have upcoming in a framework that tells you a little bit about state government. One of the frustrations we've had is I don't think people in New York City fully appreciate the state government and the state process. You're in New York City, it's about New York City government, and you focus on that. And the state government was, in truth, very sleepy for a long period of time. So it disappeared into the background, but it does many important things. It has a phenomenal impact on New York City. So it really is in everyone's best advantage to understand it. We talk about a legislative session in Albany. It goes from January to June. It really has two parts. January to March are about getting the budget done. And you hear about the budget, the budget, the budget. The budget is the most important piece of work we will do. Almost everything big is done in the budget. And that's why in the past it's where everything has fallen apart. After the budget, there's a break, come back from break, which is where we are now, and then you have the remainder of the session that takes care of any legislative items that are not budget related. And we're just starting that now when we actually have very significant issues that we're going to be dealing with. Best thing to know about the budget is it's done. Bill asked, what do you say for 5 budgets done? We say high five, Bill. That's where we had one of those big styrofoam hands. But it is 5 budgets that show government can work. Gridlock doesn't have to be the way. Washington is wrong. Their default mechanism is gridlock, and they think that's success. The right wing claims success because they claim, well, they stopped the engine. They stopped the beast, and the beast is government. That's not success. That means everybody loses. Because when the government isn't functioning, everyone loses because progress stops for everyone. And Washington has become too easy and they've become too facile at just gridlocking the system, and that's the default. New York, we do the exact opposite. You have to make it work. You have to get past the obstacles. You have to compromise, and that is the art form, and I'm proud of what we've done. It's the first time since Governor Nelson Rockefeller that the state has been able to accomplish that. The budget itself is in 2 components. It's an economic plan, how much we spend and how much we tax, which are probably the 2 most important questions for the state during the course of the year. And then what is the actual operating plan? What are you going to be doing with the money? In the past, the history of New York's economics are very simple. The budgets were out of control. They were a Christmas tree. Special interests went to Albany. I want this, I want this, I want this. Albany had a problem saying no. It's much easier to say yes. And in truth, there are legitimate needs, and the budget was out of control. And this is very simple. The more you spend, the more you tax. It's not a complicated formula. And we were spending more, and we were taxing more. And this happened for 50 years. 50 years. Why were businesses leaving? Why were people leaving? New York had a bad year or 2. No, we didn't have a bad year or 2. We had a bad 50 years in New York State. And that's why the taxes were out of control. You look at the past 50 years, Nelson Rockefeller, 12 years spent 11% more during the time of his administration. 11% increase every year. Every year the budget went up on average of 11%. So we elected Democrat, liberal Democrat, big spending Democrat, Mario Cuomo, liberal, spent 6.9% over the course of his term. Less than Rockefeller spent. Well, then we'll elect a Republican conservative. He's really going to be good at not spending money. He spent 5.2%. And at the same time that the inflation rate was 4.1. So 2 points. First, often the labels are meaningless. Republicans spend less, Democrats spend more. No. And all of the administrations were spending at a higher rate than inflation. As a matter of fact, the state government in New York was spending at a higher rate than the people in New York were earning income. State spending higher than the rate that people are making money. Just think about that. You would think it's not mathematically possible. But that's why people had the sense that the state was taking more and more of their money, because it was. We said we're going to reduce the average spending rate to 2% a year. Hence the 2 big sausage fingers saying 2%. They said it was impossible. You cannot keep spending to 2%. Just the legislative process will not allow you to do it. Well, we spent 1.4% instead of 2% over 5 years. Now, when you keep spending down, good things happen. When you intake less calories, good things happen, right? Reducing spending, we went from a $10 billion deficit when we walked in the door, which was one of the highest deficits in the history of the state, to a $5 billion surplus. We went from dealing with the largest deficit to dealing with one of the largest surpluses in this budget, which is $5 billion. And when you have a surplus, the other thing you can do is you can cut taxes. And we cut taxes all across the board because I believe the tax rate in New York was terminal to New York. I wholly disagree with the concept that you can keep raising taxes on people and they're going to sit there and take it. People have alternatives. People can move. Well, this is New York. They won't move because they love New York. That's true to a point. But if you keep raising taxes, people will get to a point where they will leave, and they will. And they go to their accountant and they say, how much more would I save if I went to Florida? How much would I save if I went to Texas? And that has been happening in New York. But New York is so special, yes. But there are other places that you actually can live if you had to. You look at the map, you see New York State, and then you see these other shapes to the left of New York, little squares, rectangles. Those are called other states. Now, they're not as nice as New York. They're not as entertaining. They don't have the culture, but they are habitable places. They are. And people will go there if you raise the taxes high enough. So my point from day one was we have to get those taxes down. We brought them down all across the board. Personal income tax, every person in this room pays a lower tax rate than the day I was elected. Every person in this room. We have the taxes for the middle class up to $300,000 are at a 50-year low. Corporate tax rates are lowest point since 1968. Manufacturing tax rates, lowest level since 1917. Property taxes capped at 2%. When they do these studies, well, New York is 49th out of 50th, they're looking at local property taxes, which do bring our taxes up. It's not a problem in New York City. It's in the outlying boroughs and upstate where they have a very high property tax. But in terms of income tax, personal income tax, corporate tax, we have it way, way down. And when you bring taxes down and you're more business-friendly, jobs go up. 640,000 new jobs. New York is number 2 in the nation in new job creation since the recession. Number 2. We're number 2 to a state called Texas, but then you have to live in Texas. Unemployment is down in every region in the state, including in upstate New York. The budget is also an operating plan. After it does the taxes and the finances, it actually gives you a plan on what you need to do for the state. And our priorities this year were infrastructure and making the infrastructure improvements that we have to make in downstate New York. And it's focusing on the airports, which are subpar and substandard and are frustrating and a sign of government failure, in my opinion. That John F. Kennedy Airport, that airport has been under construction since the day I was born, so help me God. I remember going there the first time it was under construction. I go back today, the same project is under construction. LaGuardia Airport, frankly, was always treated as a second-tier airport. Vice President went to LaGuardia and said, it looks like you're flying into a third-world country. Not the most delicate comment, but it had a truth to it. And LaGuardia has been treated as a stepchild to the entire system, and it can be a phenomenal regional asset, and we're doing a comprehensive review of it right now and moving it forward. A new Tappan Zee Bridge, after 20 years of talking about it, this budget puts $1.2 million into the new Tappan Zee Bridge. $1 billion new capital money for the MTA, because the MTA is the circulatory system of the metropolitan area, and $1 billion is a big number for capital repairs, and it's going to make a significant difference, including $250 million for 4 new Metro-North stations in the Bronx. This, my friends, mark my words, is going to transform the Bronx. When you look at the development in the outer boroughs, Queens, Brooklyn, et cetera, the one borough that has lagged compared to the others is the Bronx. These metro stations are going to make the Bronx literally minutes away from Manhattan and one of the fastest commutes, and is going to open up the Bronx in a way that it hasn't happened in decades. We also just received good news, and we're announcing today that the federal government is expected to approve a $1 billion loan to the MTA, largest loan ever of its kind for what's called positive train control, which is a safety device that can override human error or excessive speed. It is the state-of-the-art safety design for the system, and it's something that is very important. Metro North and LIRR are implementing it on 1,400 rail cars and along 588 miles of track. This is a very big development. It's because the MTA worked very hard to do it. We had great cooperation from our federal partners, Jerry Nadler, who's here, Carolyn Maloney, who's here, Senator Schumer worked on it, Senator Gillibrand worked on it, but the quarterback who carried the ball was Tom Prendergast. Tom has done a phenomenal job. It feels like he's been on the job 100 years, but actually his appointment is coming up now just in June. I've worked very closely with Tom. I've worked with him on some very exciting situations. I've worked with him on some very frightening situations after accidents and walking through the rubble of an accident and seeing things that you'd never think you would see in your life. And I've seen him take command in a true crisis, which gives you a sense of the character of the person. And the leadership of the person. President Lincoln used to say, you judge more about a leader in the tough times and the emergency times than in the good times. And I had that opportunity with Tom Prendergast, and it's my pleasure to tell you that I'm going to reappoint Tom Prendergast when it comes, his tenure becomes due in June. I hope he accepts the reappointment. Otherwise, he can move to one of those irregular-shaped states somewhere to the left and tell us how it was. Was it really habitable? Tom Prendergast. Let's give him another round of applause. We also are investing $500 million in broadband. We want to be the first state to have statewide broadband. Eisenhower did the interstate system grid. I believe the infrastructure of the future is broadband. Every house should have it. Every neighborhood should have it. And New York State will be the first state in the country to have universal broadband. The budget also includes $35 million for Global New York. Global New York is our international marketing effort. We announced the first trade missions. If anyone is interested, let us know. As you heard from Bill, we just finished Cuba. We met with the Vice President. I'll tell you, I am very excited about possibilities for Cuba. I think it's just a matter of time. We were the first state-led delegation. They were very excited to have us there. They're excited about our alliance. They are in a political dispute on raising the embargo. We can be helpful to them. And they were very receptive to new businesses coming in from New York. And we brought a delegation down with us. We actually, in a day and a half, signed 2 deals, which was amazing to me. I wasn't even expecting that. But Roswell Park, which is a leading cancer institution in Buffalo, is going to do a joint venture making vaccines for them. And Infor, which is Charles Phillips, a software company focusing on healthcare, is going to do a healthcare software agreement with them that will spread throughout Latin America. And that was just in a day and a half. And it's exciting. And I see this as a big part of a governor's role. A governor nowadays is more like a head of the Chamber of Commerce. And I see myself as a business advocate, opening markets, using the governor's office to create new business. Additionally, for New York City, which did very well in this budget because we love New York City, $100 million for NYCHA housing, which is a precedent. I used to be the HUD secretary. You've never really had cities or states fund NYCHA. NYCHA is funded by the federal government. Because we're saying the federal government hasn't funded New York City Housing Authority enough, we're actually going to subsidize a federal program, which is a different precedent, but really we had no option. $9.2 billion for education. It's a $500 million increase to New York City. It brings the state budget to 40% of the entire education budget of the city of New York, believe it or not. And this at a time when the city revenues are actually showing a surplus for themselves. So that was truly generous. $495 million for homeless services, $1.75 billion for social services. On the operating side, what we made the most dramatic reform was in the area of public education. And we have been talking about fixing the public education system for decades. And we have accomplished very little. Why? Because it is an entrenched bureaucracy. You have the strongest political interests in the state in the education space. And change is hard. Change is hard. Things are the way they are because that's how people want them. And we said at the beginning of this year, we're going to make education reform a priority. And whether you're going to fix one thing or you're going to fix 100 things, you're going to face the same opposition. So we said we may as well take on a reform that goes all across the system. And we did, literally from the beginning to the end. We have trouble getting new teachers in. The state, for the first time, is going to offer a full scholarship to students who will give us 5 years as a public school teacher. The state will pay their college education and graduate education in SUNY and CUNY. First time ever a state has offered that. We have teachers programs that qualify people to become teachers. They're called euphemistically teacher mills because there was no state standard. The state will now license every teacher program in the state. Upon graduation, a teacher will have to pass a standardized test akin to a bar exam. Every teacher is going to have to pass the bar exam to get a state license. We then have a teacher evaluation system, which is the heart of the system and the most controversial piece of the system. Why? Because it transforms the education system from a system based on seniority to a system based on performance. In other words, teachers, professionals, how did you determine who got a raise, who got a promotion, et cetera? Seniority. Why? Because you didn't have any other measure, and the concept was if you don't have any other measure, the longer a person was there, the better they probably were. Well, if you now have an evaluation system, then use the evaluation system. And that's exactly what this system does. It also reduces student testing because we believe they're over-tested and overstressed, and that's what's generating a lot of the angst among parents. You should applaud for that because it's true. We have changed tenure, where we have increased the time of tenure from 3 to 4 years, and we've linked it to the evaluation system. So what does tenure mean? Tenure means we want to give teachers protection who we want to keep. So we said 3 to 4 years, but tenure for teachers who have received one of the top 2 rankings for 3 of the past 4 years. In other words, if a teacher is not effective, you don't want to give that teacher tenure. So tenure on the condition of performance. We've added a $20,000 bonus per teacher for a high-performing teacher. On an average salary of $60,000, the state will pay 100 cents on the dollar a $20,000 bonus to any teacher who gets a top ranking to incentivize high performance. First time that's ever happened. And on teacher removal, We've all heard about the rubber room, et cetera, and how hard it is. If a teacher gets 2 ineffectives in a row, 2 years, 2 ineffectives, the local district can bring a proceeding to dismiss the teacher. If a teacher gets 3 ineffectives in a row, the district must bring a motion to dismiss the teacher. So 3 ineffectives, the teacher will be dismissed. People say, well, that's tough because you would dismiss a teacher. You tell me one other profession where you get to have 3 bad years before anything happens. And if a teacher has 3 bad years, 3 ineffectives, then really it's in the teacher's interest and certainly in the student's interest that we find the teacher something else to do. Those reforms are all in place, and the last one is failing schools, which to me is in some ways the most imminent. You have schools that have been failing schools for over 10 years. We've sent 250,000 students to failing schools. We have 16,000 students today in New York City failing schools. When you send a kid to a failing school, you know the outcome of that child's education. Nothing's going to change automatically overnight. It's just us having given up in some ways on the system. Failing schools are always in the poorer communities. They're always in the communities where the students need the most help, the most supplemental help, nutrition, mentoring, recreation, help with homework. And year after year, the answer has been nothing we can do, just keep sending them to failing schools. This program says we'll give the local district 1 year. If they don't improve it in 1 year, we're going to turn the school over to a receivership and bring in different rules, keep that school open, and turn it into a community school, which will stay open past 3 o'clock and be a one-stop social service center. All the services provided in that school, and the state will provide $75 million, get the students the help they need, admit that it's not working. That is a comprehensive reform of the education system, and it was all done in the budget. We also have pre-K for 4-year-olds statewide, and we're starting something called pre-K for 3-year-olds, where we would be the first state in the country to have pre-K for 3-year-olds. The teacher evaluation system is complicated, but suffice it to say it judges 2 criteria: students' progress on tests and in-classroom observations. And SED, State Education Department, is charged with implementing the system. Based on that, we provided a 6.1% increase to education. The state now funds education at the highest level in the history of the state of New York. This reform was a very, very difficult challenge. It took on all the special interests that want the education system just the way it is. But at the end of the day, we won, and we're very excited about this accomplishment. Brookings said yesterday, New York will provide a blueprint for other states as they tweak their own education systems in the coming years. So I want to applaud my colleagues in the legislature who took a gutsy vote, took on a lot of the establishment in Albany, but they did the right thing by the children. And that was their job, and they did it. So I congratulate them. We also have a dramatic ethics reform plan because we have had a series of ethical issues in Albany that have generated a lot of headlines. That hurts government, that hurts Albany. So we passed the most comprehensive ethics reform plan ever. We have ethical reforms that they were trying to get done for 50 years. Disclosure of law clients for legislators who are also lawyers. So this is the most transparent, aggressive disclosure bill literally in the country. In short, we said that we can put together an administration that does 2 things, that can be economically responsible and socially progressive. To be socially progressive, you don't have to be economically irrational, right? You can be socially progressive and sane when it comes to finances. And that's the government we now have. We're fiscally moderate, you use your term. We're cutting taxes, we're driving the economy, it's working, but we are as socially progressive as any government in the United States, and we are setting the bar higher and higher in terms of social progress for other states to follow, women's rights, environmental rights, first marriage equality law in the state of New York, and we're not going to stop. We're doing both. Challenge now in the second part is to keep it going. We have 8 weeks left. Top priority for me is going to be to combat sexual assault on college campuses. I'm going to have 3 daughters in college. The number of sexual assaults on women in colleges is staggering. Some studies say 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 women will be a victim of sexual assault. The way many campuses handle the sexual assault is as an internal matter for their campus security and their academics to handle, because the campuses don't want publicity for these situations. It's bad for the school. Yeah, I understand that. I also understand that this is a crime, and that if you don't find the perpetrator, it'll probably happen again. And rape is rape, and we have to protect our students on campuses. So we're going to work on that law this year. We have to extend rent regulations and a little program called 421A, which is a real estate program. If we don't extend 421A, the mayor's hope of creating more affordable housing will change dramatically. 421A is probably the main way that we provide affordable housing in the city of New York. So that's going to be very important to happen this year. We have a series of education reforms that are important. Raising the charter school cap, because the charter schools are almost up against their cap. Enact the education tax credit, which is a tax credit program that helps religious schools that the Cardinal has been working on, because a lot of the religious schools, Catholic, Jewish, are closing because they don't have funds. Passing the DREAM Act, which is very important. And extending mayoral control in New York City, which is important. I support it. The Assembly supports it. The Senate Republicans have questions about it, so that's going to be a lively debate. We're also working on criminal justice legislation to raise the age of criminality from 16 to 18, and criminal justice reforms around the grand jury report, and raising the minimum wage, so everyone enjoys success in this economy, and a property tax cut proposal that's on the table. That is the legislature. My guess will do other things, but these are probably the top priorities. In sum, we have accomplished a lot. I believe the job of government is to get things done and to make things happen. I believe government is a service bureau. Government is not a debating society. And I want to be judged on what we actually got done. I was with a gentleman the other night at a cocktail party who introduced himself, and he said he was an author. And we spent some minutes chatting, older gentleman, about my age. And he was chatting about ideas he had and plots and for stories and characters, and he was telling these beautiful, descriptive. And I said, well, how many books have you written? And he said, well, none yet, actually. At one point, it's what you accomplished. A legislator, an executive, is paid because we're supposed to make life better. We're supposed to accomplish change. We're supposed to forget the politics and the fights, Democrats, Republicans, and get to yes, so your life is better. That's what we have been doing in the state of New York. We have the most ambitious education reform in decades that is done. The strongest ethics and disclosure law in the nation that is done. The lowest taxes in 50 years, highest credit rating in the state's history, most jobs in the state's history, and the best functioning state government in modern political history. And that's a record that Speaker Hastie and Assemblyman Aubrey, state legislators, should be very proud of. because it is their record. We made New York a better place. And that, to me, is the test at the end of the day. We put my father in the ground in January. My father used to say, the question is, at the end of the day, did you make this place a better place? Tikkun olam, did you make this place a better place? Matthew 25, did you make this place a better place and help people? And government can be a vehicle to make this place a better place. I think we did in our capacity. I think that's what it's all about. That's what this organization has preached for many, many years. Bill Rudin, in his way, made this place a better place. Every person in this room wants to make this place a better place than we found it, and together we will. Thank you, and God bless you.
We'll do a couple of Q&A. Governor, you definitely have made this place the city a better place to live, work, and visit, and that's our tagline. So we thank you, and thank you for coming to ABNY. The governor has agreed to answer a few questions, and I'm going to take Chairman's prerogative. You mentioned in the speech and at the speech back in January about the airports, and specifically, obviously, in the papers in the last couple of days was the discussion about LaGuardia and the timing and where these proposals stand. Can you give us a little bit more color on the plan for redeveloping LaGuardia?
Let me be a little provocative this morning, just because I'm basically bored, and a little provocation in the morning makes it a whole different day. The LaGuardia, first, our airports. You fly anywhere in the world, as you do all the time, and you see that our airports are substandard, and they have been for a long time, and it's almost laughable, the situation that our airports are in, and whether it's JFK or LaGuardia. LaGuardia, in my opinion, has been worse, because LaGuardia was treated like the stepchild. And JFK was our international airport, and Newark is the international airport on the other side of the river, and the Port Authority of New York focused on those two. And I think LaGuardia got short shrift. I also think LaGuardia is the airport that has probably the greatest potential for New York. The approach to LaGuardia reconstruction was piecemeal. We'll do this piece, then we'll do this piece, then we'll do this piece, then we'll do this piece. That's why the constant construction. And when you do it piecemeal like that, you never have a comprehensive vision, a comprehensive plan. And that was the approach that was taken. We said last year, we want to take a different approach on LaGuardia. We want a comprehensive plan. We want to stop the piecemeal approach. By the way, piecemeal winds up being much more expensive, and it goes on forever, and it's more cumbersome. We want a comprehensive redesign that makes one airport out of the entire piece. Also, the plan with LaGuardia was basically to replace what was. Replacing what was going to condemn the airport to remain an out-of-date 1940s, 1950s airport. We didn't want to replace what was. We wanted to improve what was and make it state-of-the-art. We put together a design committee. Dan Tishman, Queensborough President Melinda Katz, who's here. They had a very short time window. They've come up with new designs. They are as exciting as heck. I sat with Dan Tishman. He went through it with me just the other day. Rick Cotton is working on it. Pat Foy is working on it. Dan Tishman was very involved with Ground Zero and the memorial, and he's one of the best literally on the planet. So we have a redesigned, basically an extended redesign of LaGuardia that we believe can go forthwith on a timely basis. People say, well, if you make a change, it's going to take a long period of time. I don't accept government incompetence as an excuse before the fact, you know. Well, government doesn't have the capacity to make a change. No, government can be competent. I believe that. Doesn't happen often, but it can be. And I don't want to assume or accept incompetence as a reason for doing a substandard project. So there are some changes. The board's looking at them now, and I believe it's going to move forward very soon and on a timely basis, and is going to be a much, much, much better project.
Okay, open to the floor. Mr. Kriegel.
Governor, I want to first thank you for the gift of Tom Prendergast. Everybody here knows that the subways are critical to our economy, and Tom is the best person to keep them functioning well. I want to thank you also for the emphasis on education. What you laid out today is terribly impressive. Two issues that you mentioned have been rumored to be linked together, the charter school cap and mayoral control. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about what we might expect there, since I think many, if not most of us here, have worked hard on those issues and think they're both critical to the ongoing improvement of the city school system.
Okay. The word, Jay used the word linkage. Nothing is linked, everything is linked. It is not a legislative process, it is human behavior. I want to go to dinner tonight, you want to go to the gym, okay, we'll work it out, we'll go to dinner, we'll also go to the gym, okay? The Democratic Assembly supports mayoral control. I support mayoral control. Senate Republicans are not that excited about mayoral control. Senate Republicans want to extend the charter cap. The Democratic Assembly is not that excited about extending the charter cap. So there's no linkage, but I want to go to dinner, you want to go to the gym, maybe we can work it out. If you're not coming to dinner, I'm not going to the gym, just so you know, right? So that's the dynamic they talk about when they talk about linkage. Charter cap is this. There are about 24 charters that can be issued in New York City remaining. And the charter movement says that means we're virtually out of business because we can't expand. I believe in the charter movement. The charter movement is never going to supplement or supplant public education. 85% of our students are in public education. They always will be. The whole charter school movement, and even if we talk about education tax credit, you're talking about pennies, right? Our education budget is $23 billion. Charter schools are maybe a couple of $100 million in all of that. But I believe charter schools are important. I believe they're laboratories. I believe they're innovation. I believe they start a dialogue. Some of them have had phenomenal success. So I believe the charter cap should be raised. I also believe in mayoral control. Mayoral control, the Senate Republicans are going to want to have a robust debate. What is mayoral control? Mayoral control with what safeguards? Should there be safeguards? Should there be caveats on mayoral control? And then how long? The mayor has asked for permanent mayoral control. The Assembly's position is 6 or 7 years. Mine is 3 years. The Senate is basically 0. So that has to be rationalized because there's a big gap from 0 to permanent, right? That's one of the larger gaps that we have there. So that is that situation. Charter cap is controversial. Mayoral control is going to be controversial.
I forgot to recognize Melinda Katz before, Borough President of Queens. Thank you, Melinda, for being here. I don't think she cares about airports. No, I'm kidding. One more question.
Could I ask you if you'd be interested in going beyond in your remarks on 421A and on rent control? Would you amplify what you said in your speech, or do you have anything else to add to that?
Yes. Not that I wanted to add, but now that you have publicly embarrassed me into adding it, I will add it. It's good because Bill and I have been friends for 30 years. It's always your friends who put you in a bad situation. You ever notice it? The 421A, first, I believe, has to be extended, and I believe that's essential. And we can't leave without 421A. Many people want changes to 421A. And in truth, there's a good case to make that 421A does need changes. The real estate industry wants changes. The Carpenters Union wants changes. If it was a different time in Albany, frankly, and Albany was a little bit more of a stable situation, I would normally take those negotiations to Albany and try to work it out among the parties. Albany is somewhat, has a lot going on right now, let's say. So I'm hoping and I'm asking the parties to work out the disagreements among themselves or their desires for modifications. If they can, great. In any event, 421A has to be extended. Rent has to be extended. It is a New York City issue. If we don't extend rent, you would have chaos in the real estate market. These are rent regulations, rent stabilization, et cetera. You would have chaos in the real estate market unlike anything we have seen, because it regulates the private industry, not another government. It lapses one day. You will see real estate entities and landlords start raising rents, evicting tenants. I mean, it would be immediate mass mayhem. So at a minimum, we have to extend those protections. But in truth, because everyone has been watching the situation here, to have these finer negotiations on these delicate points is going to be problematic this year. So at a minimum, rent's extended, 421A is extended. At a maximum, maybe we can make some fine modifications in both of them. The Democratic Assembly is going to be more aggressive on extending rent than the Senate Republicans. 421A, both houses want.
Governor, thank you very, very much for your insightful comments and your tremendous leadership. Very busy weekend in sports. Got the Rangers tonight. Go Rangers, the Subway Series. And we'll see you in a couple weeks when Scott Reckler speaks. And also next week we have the Spirit of ABNY. Thank you all for being here. Thank you.
Good to see you, buddy.